all of you guys can hear me. And
Yes.
it's always a great pleasure to talk to our real future. And I refer to you guys as our real future because at the end of the day, no matter whatever we do, the only investment that really matters is an investment that nation makes in its next generation. And and this is why I think the true asset of any nation, it's its next generation, how capable it is, how energetic it is, how innovative it is, how much are they willing to lead us. And because in 10, 15, 20 years, me and my generation will phase out and you guys will take over. And we will depend on your leadership, your innovation, your hard work to take this nation to new horizons. So uh, I think the second thing I like about talking and spending time with young people is that young people are all full of energy and they're always eager to take on new things and new challenges. And actually, that energizes you. And I really enjoy that working with young people. The the title of my talk today is actually a very famous book written by Jeff Colvin. It is called "Talent is Overrated," and it basically I have been living this particular message in my life in the last 40 odd years that I have been in this industry. And I've seen it happen again and again. And the basic idea really is what is the role of hard work? What is the role of mentorship? What is the role of individual effort to take you somewhere in life? Or there is some other things that matter. So this is a core to how we achieve things. This is the core of how some of the Olympic winners, some of the great champions, some of the great CEOs, they have all in common. This work was done by conducting interviews of some 3,000 plus people over a period of 30 years to figure out how great people achieve great things in life. And so that's the topic I want to talk about because I would like to hope that each one of you and all the parents of the young people present here are very interested in knowing what made great people great. What is the formula? Is there a formula? Right. So, in starting this discussion, I just want to give you a quick background that I have spent my earlier life. I grew up in Pakistan. And actually, one of the earliest memories I have in Pakistan are the relationship of Pakistan with China, and and this is the reason why when you talk to people from Pakistan, they have some very good memories of China, and the reason for that is the two countries have always had very historically very good relationship, and the two countries refer to each other as iron brother, which I think in Chinese is called Batian. And then we have a similar word in our language as well. And after that, I came to this country. I did my PhD in computer science, but specializing on chip design. I spent all my life in chip design. First 10 years or so, I was a professor. And as a professor, my job was to do research. I wrote some of the fundamental textbooks in this field, graduated many PhD students, master students. But then I worked at a company called Intel for next 10 years or so. And in the last 20 years, I've been an entrepreneur and I have built around 18, 19 companies. I have raised around $1.25 billion for those companies. Many of those companies we have exited. But my journey of life has been sort of being a professor, then working in a large company, and then being an entrepreneur and built many, many companies. So as a result, I have seen uh, the career development, uh, what happens when you go to a large public university, how do you, attract students, how do you get funding, how do you become a good professor, then how do you survive in a large company like Intel, how do you get promotions, and then as entrepreneur, how do you raise money, how do you handle your board, how do you recruit your team, how do you sell your company eventually. So things like that. So in that sense, I have seen things from very different perspectives in life, from a professor point of view, from a career in a large company, and then as an entrepreneur, building many, many companies. Secondly, I think I've also built companies, not just in US, but I've built companies in China, I've built companies in Korea, I've built Pakistan, I've built companies in India, and other countries as well. So, so this is a very wide base of experience. And based on this experience, when I started learning about Jeff's work, it became clear to me that uh, there has to be a formula. What I have used, others use. What is that formula? How do people become successful? Is it an accident? Are people just lucky? Or they have great parents? Or they have good friends? Or they are very hardworking? Or they have something called talent? What is it? So that's when I started reading about this material. And it, I'll give you 3 or 4 topics I think that we are going to discuss today. So number one is, are we born with some talent, some hidden talent inside our body, inside our genes, that makes some people successful and some people are simply not successful because they have no talent? So let me tell you from the top that there is nothing such thing called a talent. There is no genes that we can find that like if somebody is a great music player, we cannot find any genes in them, that a DNA or something that makes them great piano players. We have never been able to find out from any of these people that how they have become, successful based on uh, the traits of their parents or their friends, nothing like that. So what is it? What makes people successful? So we will talk about 5, 6 subjects today. Number one, we think a very basic element of their success is something called deliberate practice. Notice we are not using the word hard work. We are using the word deliberate practice. And a lot of research has gone into what is deliberate practice. We'll talk about that. Secondly, how important is smarts? When you see somebody, people say, yeah, this person was very good in piano. Even when he was a child, he was a great piano. Oh, he's a genius. He was a born genius. Things like that. We make a lot of statements like that. So we'll talk about how important is that, or is there is something called smarts? What is it? Then we'll talk about the 5 elements of deliberate practice. How can you do deliberate practice? What people do that? Then some examples of some top performers, people that you know, people that you have heard about, people that you have read books about. And finally, how can you apply these principles in your life and you can become a top performer using some of these principles. Next slide, please. So in the world of business, one of the iconic personalities was Jack Welch. Jack Welch was the CEO of GE, General Electric, and it took General Electric to the top of the world of business. And as a result, people at that time would thought that there is no greater CEO ever existed in the history of the business. And Jack Welch was very well known because he will go and teach others how to do business in a great way and things so and so forth. So that's on the business side. Then we have somebody like Tiger Woods, a person who became one of the greatest golf players in the whole world, and so forth. I can give you many such examples. If you follow football or basketball, or if you like chess, if you play violin or piano, in your field, you will find out there are some amazingly awesome people, and they are absolutely world class. Question is, what makes them world class? So one thing could be they just have natural talent, meaning they were just born with it. And so I want to tell you today, there is nothing called natural talent, as at least we cannot see something called natural talent. Secondly, some people say, oh, that person works very hard. He just puts in more hours than everybody else. I can also tell you, has nothing to do with how hard you work. Hard work is the important component of it, but that's not all. And the third thing people may say is that, oh, he has been at it for so long. But sometimes people are not at it for some long. So what is it? So if it's not natural talent, if it is not exactly hard work, it is not years of experience, what is this mystery? What makes Jack Welch and Tiger Woods or Isaac Perlman one of these great? So this is where we introduce the subject. All right. So we believe that if you want to ever achieve excellent performance, we're not talking about good performance. We're talking about excellent performance. Excellent performance refers to top 1% of the athletes, people who get gold medals. It refers to people who achieve big things in business, create great companies, or people who achieve in their respective field really the top performance. This excellent performance is entirely up to a person. Everybody can achieve excellent performance. There is a formula to that, and the formula is what we are going to describe in the next 10 minutes or so. So this research had been conducted over a very large uh, number of cases, 3,000 plus, very famous people over 30 years. And the key findings are: number one, that if you just look at top talent and try to correlate with IQ or any other things that we cannot find direct correlation. It's just and if you just take the Mensa score of lots of people, we cannot show that everybody who has high IQ leads to great performance. So that's not it. Neither can we say that if you directly correlate the people who have been put in the most number of hours in their life, that they have been able to do that. That is also doesn't seem to be the case. Then what is the case? We think it is what we call deliberate practice. All right. So what is the deliberate practice? So deliberate practice is a way of performing a task, which is you pick a task, any task you want. Let's say you decide to play tennis, right? And in tennis, you decide that you want to serve and you want to become the best serve person in the world. Let's say this is an example, right? Obviously, you have certain height, you have certain weight, you have certain physique, all that goes into that. But let's assume that you're in the top physique. Your height is very good because in tennis, height might matter. And then you're in a very good physical shape. Let's all that is true, right? Then how do you go about practicing for that serve matters. So one thing we can tell you about deliberate practice, it is extremely difficult, meaning once we will tell you how do you perform that function, it will come to you that it is actually very difficult because the main issue is not your body. The main issue is your mind. Most of the time, people who are unable to do deliberate practice is because they cannot concentrate on that task for so long. For example, I may ask you to practice uh, a tennis serve, for 500 times. But every time, follow very precise formula that has been told to you by your coach. You must stand in this way. You must raise racket in a certain way. You must hit the ball in a certain way. You must hit the ball at a certain angle. You must hit the ball at a certain velocity. And you must know that you have done it and with how much accuracy have you done it each and every time. And you must do it again and again and again and again, many, many, many times in a day, every day. And we may ask you to do it for many, many years. How many people have the physical capacity, but more importantly, mental capacity to do something like that? So why some people can do it and why some people cannot do that? So this is actually comes to where maybe we have some genes about that if we have to do research. This comes down to passion. So see, whenever some people ask you that you should follow your passion. The real reason for that is because most people, when we will ask them to do deliberate practice, what I just described, to do a certain function in a very precise fashion every day for years, maybe even decades, you will never do something when unless you naturally love doing it. And that's where passion comes into it, because unless you have passion for being a great tennis player, you will simply not go out there in the heat and subject your body day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, and decade after decade to achieve and become the number one tennis player in the world. This is why we say that you should do what your passion is, not because of any other reason. It's because passion will force you, allow you to be able to do deliberate practice. But the result of this is very simple. And this is not just uh, in one particular field of playing music or chess or anything like that. We have seen, since humanity has learned deliberate practice, performance in every field, records in every field have improved. How fast can we run today is much better than how we were running 20 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago. How we are playing chess, how we are playing tennis, how do we do various different things in life have all improved because humanity has learned various different aspects of deliberate practice. So one of the key studies that was done was on students, music students, uh, play violin. And researchers were focused on why some students are A violin players, some became B violin players, and some become C violin players. What is it? So they started studying that how much time each player dedicates to playing violin in this group of violinists, right? And they started studying how hard somebody practices, how much they practice in a day, and how many days do they practice. So basically speaking, that they they try to study, is there a differences in those we can study. And I think they found out that the very important thing is that it's not something what we call, whatever you want to call as talent, but it is amount of practice that a person is doing, but a way the practice is done, right? So it's very important that the practice in what they found out was what we now call deliberate practice. It's not the amount. And more they studied their students, the more and more they found out the difference between A class players, B class players, and C class players is amount the deliberate practice they're putting in. Then we start taking some examples of famous people like Mozart. And uh, we always say that, he was as if he was a child prodigy and he started, writing great music and performing great music when he was at what age. Actually, that's not true. He did start at the age of 3, but both of his parents were actually music teachers. And I think it is first composition one, he was at age 15 or 16. But by that time, he was playing piano for 12 years. He wrote his first symphony when I believe he was age 21. By that time, literally, he was playing music every day for many, many, many hours for 2 decades before he wrote his first true symphony. So if you think about that, although it looks like that Mozart was very successful and very early age, and it is an early age, a person to become an international celebrate musician at age 21 or 22 is huge. But if you look at it, he started very early and he put in 2 decades of work before he became, a celebrated musician. But to be very honest, in his life, he was not very celebrated. It took many, many more decades when the world really recognized his talent. It would be many more years after that. So Mozart is one example. You can see it was not talent. Actually, it was the hard work, and of course, a very important role played by the two parents. And we'll talk more about that. What is the role of mentor in deliberate practice? Then you take the example of Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods' situation is very interesting. His father, I think, got divorced or something happened in his life, and he had this young son. Father is very passionate about playing golf, and he started taking his young son, very young, I think it was age 1, 2, or 3, some very young age, and started taking Tiger. And as a result, he was very familiar with golf from a very early age. He was around golf players. He knew everything about golf. And basically, when he was only 2 years old, when his father started taking him to regular practice. So actually, if you talk to Tiger Woods or his father, both of them will not attribute his success to any talent that Tiger was born with or he has any genes, but the amount of hard work. We now call it deliberate practice. And you will see the role of Tiger's father in this deliberate practice in a moment. But this is yet another example. And we wanted to take an example from sports because it's music is one kind of a thing, sports another thing. There, I think we can give you examples for people who are chess players. We can give you more sportsmen in basketball. There are Jerry Rice was a very famous football player. He was, and he is one of the examples that we have seen. So let's now quickly review what is deliberate practice. So deliberate practice is that, and you take a particular task, whatever task you have in mind. It could be belly dancing, as you see in this one, or serve on tennis, or a certain moves in chess, or any of these things. So you pick that, and then you pick your specific weakness that you want to improve on. Okay, and you practice that, and then you do that again and again and again, because as we said earlier, hard work is very important part of it. And the important thing is to build practice over a long period of time. And you may have heard that it takes 10 years or 10,000 hours. All of that is true, but something more that is important, and that is that first, whatever particular task that you're doing, it should be very well documented. You should know the task that you're performing, the way it is being performed, and it is broken down into sub pieces so that we can study it, we can improve it, we can figure out how we can do better, right? That's number one. And number two, practice is cumulative. You have to just keep on doing it again and again and again. All right, next slide, please. So the 5 elements of deliberate practice is that your activity is designed very specifically to improve your performance. But big thing about that is you have a mentor, a teacher, a coach that helps you. I'll give you a famous example of a surgeon heart surgeon, who was at the top of his field, and he basically thought that, nobody, he's the best. So he was convinced that why don't you take on a coach? And he said, why should I get a coach? He says, because maybe coach can tell you how you can do a heart surgery better. He reluctantly agreed to take on an older professor and asked the professor, can you join me and watch me during the surgery and see if you can give me some hints? So it was a very complicated surgery that he did. It took many hours, and its surgery was so successful that the whole staff clapped and told the surgeon, wow, what a great job you have done. So the surgeon triumphantly came out thinking that the person that he had as a coach would tell him that he did a great job. And the coach said, yes, it was a good surgery. I really like what you did. And I have few suggestions. And so the surgeon said, what are your suggestions? So he says, I don't have one suggestion. I have 8 pages of suggestions that I've written down that you can improve. So you can see that even the people who are at the top, when they have a teacher, have a coach, have a mentor, you can learn from. Number 2, Activity has to be such it can be repeated. It should not depend on some external factors that you must be able to repeat it again and again and again and again. Why? Because this theory only applies to things which are done again and again, right? The third very important thing about that activity is that you must receive feedback every day. Every time you do that activity, you must receive feedback from your coach, your teacher, your mentor. And you must take that feedback, incorporate that feedback that day, that time into in your routine and improve it. And these activities typically are usually very highly mentally demanding. It could be chess, it could actually be business, it could be sport, and any of these things. And the most important thing we say about deliberate practice is that it is not fun. Most people say that, you know, if you are trying to become number one player, chess player in the world, or number one tennis player in the world, or number one something else in the world, if you do deliberate practice, if you are doing 8, 10, 12, 15 hours a day, you have a coach who's constantly criticizing you, constantly telling you what to improve, you go back again, do it again, do it again, do it again, do it again. It's not something fun. It is not, people don't do it because it's fun, because people do it because they have passion, they want to become number one in the world. But here is how you do deliberate practice. Do something repeatable that you're passionate about. Have a coach who basically tells you what to do, improve each and every time how to do better. And then, more importantly, you incorporate that feedback. You are a kind of a person who listens to that kind of feedback, improve, and then you keep on doing it over many, many years or even decades. But we can tell you this is the secret formula of the people who have become very successful. And I think, as we have said earlier, that more and more repetition that you've done, but it is also not something that is done too much. Repetition is very important, but you should not, it's not a good idea that you go there and if you want to improve your service, you go and work there for 8 hours, 10 hours. The idea is not to exhaust yourself. Idea is to perform some task over some limited time. And in many fields, it's like should not be more than 5 hours. But the real idea is that you perform a task, don't exhaust yourself. Don't do it to a point where you're just tired and you won't even be able to analyze what you did right or wrong. Do that. The key thing is reps. Do it again and again and again. But in between the again, you go to the teacher, you find out what exactly you did not do, uh, that you could have done better. And the teacher, of course, sitting outside look at you, should be able to give you this feedback. Some of the very important things about people we see is that they do deliberate practice throughout their life. It's not like if you see some of the tennis players or some of the business CEOs who are very successful, that they achieve something in life, they said, okay, now I'm successful. That's not actually what they do. They are always doing this. They're always doing deliberate practice. They are constantly looking, how can I improve myself? But there are some other things about them that when you do deliberate practice for a long time, you'd start developing some skills that other people don't have. And a very important one is ability to look further ahead. What does it mean? For example, it has been noticed that very good tennis players, after they play tennis for a long time, can tell by the way somebody is holding a tennis racket, or the way they bounce the ball, or way their foot are aligned on the tennis court, what kind of serve they are going to do. There would be a slight difference between the kinds of serves they do, but if you know that slight difference, You can anticipate and you can react. If you do some tasks again and again for decades, you get this ability to see further. And at the top level of performance we are talking about, this little difference makes a very, very big difference. Another thing about these top performances, they do not consider their performance automatic. Meaning, if they win gold medal in one event, and you see that in tennis players, by the way, it happens all the time, that the tennis players go win one uh, uh, tournament, but it doesn't mean that they win the second tournament. Why not? Because the conditions are different, the courts are different, competition is different, rules are different. So you cannot assume that your performance is automatic. You have to keep on striving and striving again and again, and you cannot become complacent. This is very important. The other thing is very important is they basically understand the significance of indicators or the number of elements that drive that performance. For example, let's take the example of tennis serve. The way you hold the racket, the way you stand, what was the speed of the ball, how high the ball was put in the air, what the racket speed, what was the initial speed, what was the angle of the racket. So I could tell you 40 different things you could study about a tennis serve. And if you look at all these indicators, if you study them, you can find out what is the difference between a great serve and an amazing serve. And that is the difference between a good player, a great player, and a champion, right? Same thing, just like I said that about looking further, we think that people start delivering intuition. What it means is that they start getting some sense about these little nuances in the people, and then that gives them a little bit, again, the same thing, look further, be able to uh, project what this opponent is going to do, which other people may not be able to see. And so this is how they can know more by seeing less data, is because they have this intuition, because they have studied the indicators, before they have studied the parameters, they can see that this person, the way it is standing, can never deliver that speed of the serve that is needed at that point in game. It's because they're standing wrong by 1 degree, maybe half a degree or 2 degrees. You see what I'm saying? So how do you apply your principles in life? How do I apply this principle in my life? So first of all in life, you have to know where you want to go, which has nothing to do with anybody else has to. You have to know, and then you have to be able to set the direction, whatever particular task or things that you have decided to become very good at. Second, you must put a deliberate practice process in place, which requires, and you guessed it right, the number one is to select a coach, a teacher, a mentor. Could be your parent, could be the coach that you have from school, could be a teacher, could be an elder person in your family and your community, could be a person who was in your field but has now retired or is willing to mentor you. Doesn't matter. Having the ability to be mentored is a very rare capability. Most people say they want to be mentored, actually they don't want to be. Truly be open yourself and let somebody criticize you always about what you're not doing right, and accept that criticism and put that criticism in your practice and improve it, is a very rare thing. And this is common thing about all champions. They have this rare capability that they allow other people to criticize whatever they're doing, and then look at the criticism, look at the feedback, and apply that feedback and improve whatever they have done. This is very important. So you have to find that teacher. Tech, you have to deepen your domain knowledge. This idea that you can drop out from a college and you can start something and you can become a billionaire is a myth. If it happened 1 or 2 times, there were some other factors. And this is not something that you can repeat or you can do again and again. So we believe that you have to know where you're going. You have to convert that into repeatable tasks, get yourself a teacher, a mentor, and then keep on deepening your knowledge in your domain. The more deep knowledge that you have in this domain, the more nuances you will understand, more further you will be able to see, and you can become better and better compared to other people. The way it is done is that you build a kind of a mental model of what you do, and then you start looking at various different indicators or elements of that model, keep on studying it, add more and more indicators, how you can study that deeper than others. For example, you want to become a champion walker. Just walk, you want to walk more than anybody in the world. Everybody just walks, but you can say, what is my walking speed? What is my average walk length? How many times my 2 feet were on the ground? What my balance? How many times there is a variation between my step length? How do I perform when I'm going up? How do I perform when I'm going down? So again, take any particular task, break it down into various different elements, and you know how you can study it. Once you can start doing that, and you start with the help of a coach, you will start improving that. And if you keep on doing it every day, yes, of course, we are saying don't overexert yourself, but get up every day and do it every day. You will find out very soon, you will start, whatever you're trying to do starts becoming better, much, much better every day. And you will see the improvement yourself. And if you are interested in this topic, I think you will find out that you will know more, you will become more innovative just because you know that task better, whatever you're trying to do. It will help you become more creative because you have very deep knowledge now. You know more about that subject than people around you. If you are more innovative, you're more creative, you're doing deliberate practice, you're doing it for a decade, I can guarantee you that you will be more successful than anybody else around you. And this is what we have found in thousands and thousands of successful people. As you can see, has nothing to do with talent. I didn't talk about any genetics you have. I didn't talk about what your parents gave you through your birth, and you were born in this family or that family. None of that is important. It is very, very simple. It is deliberate practice. It is your passion. Passion is very important. It is your ability to do the hard work in a certain way that makes people successful. So to summarize, I will basically say that it is good. You should learn. You should read the book. Talent is overrated. It's a good book. It's available online. If you pick it up, read it. There are other books. There is a very good book called Grit. I think I would suggest you read that book as well, and learn how to do deliberate practice in whatever you're doing, which means what is the importance of repetition, what is the importance of a teacher, what is the importance of feedback, focus, concentration, mental models. Become an expert in that area, whatever that area is. You should know more than anybody else in the world about that subject. If you're passionate, if you want to be number one, how come you don't know more than everybody else in the world? You should know that. You should become. Once you have that knowledge, it will help you get that insight, get that intuition that other people don't. Third very important thing is champions are never complacent. You don't remain champion. You can become a champion, you can win a gold medal, but you will not remain champion if you become complacent. If you want to keep on winning, you have to keep on applying the deliberate practice. And in the end, it is still hard work. It is a lot of hard work. It is not fun work. It is hard work done in a special way that makes people successful. I hope that has left you with a very clear message that you should never feel that I could not become successful, oh, because I don't have the talent of this and that. Each one of you can become Tiger Wood. Each one of you can become Mozart.